Meet Jonathan Bird, one of the world's top underwater nature cinematographers. Traveling the world on assignment for all the major networks, he is an Emmy Award-winning authority on the underwater world. In freshwater or salt, reefs, wrecks, or caves, Jonathan documents the world beneath the waves. Welcome to the Blue World.
Antarctica, the frozen continent. Its hostile conditions and exotic marine life are legendary. For years, I've yearned to travel to the bottom of the Earth to see this magnificent frozen world for myself. And finally, I've done it. Getting from the United States all the way to Antarctica at the bottom of the Earth takes nearly a week, and it starts with a flight to Ushuaia, Argentina, at the tip of Tierra del Fuego. Often called the gateway to Antarctica, Ushuaia is a beautiful little coastal city in Patagonia at the base of a large mountain range. Many of the ships departing for Antarctica use Ushuaia as their port. Ushuaia is surrounded by a large national park. Rugged, craggy mountains tower above Ushuaia. They're beautiful, but of course, I'm more interested in the underwater scenery. So, I'm spending a day in Ushuaia to do a couple dives in the Beagle Channel. The Beagle Channel is a long, narrow passage of water protected by land on both sides. Well, we're finally gonna go diving in Ushuaia, and I'm really excited to try to see something that they're famous for. You mostly see it in the restaurants downtown, but I want to see it alive, the giant king crab. Captain Carlos from Ushuaia Divers unties the boat from the dock, and we're on our way under a beautiful blue sky. It's summer here in the southern hemisphere, and even though Ushuaia is very far south, the air temperature regularly makes it into the 60-degree range, sometimes even the 70s. The water temperature is more like 45 degrees, about what I'm used to diving at home in New England. That means I'll be wearing my dry suit. Time to get ready. It keeps the water out with an airtight zipper like the one on a spacesuit. Unfortunately, the dry suit is quite buoyant from all the air inside, so I have to wear a lot of weight to submerge. My gear is cumbersome and heavy, but that's the price you pay to dive in cold water. All right, I'm ready. Let's go check it out!
That's a gate? Okay.
Underwater, the Beagle Channel is beautiful, filled with huge kelp forests stretching towards the surface. This kelp is a kind of fast-growing algae that can grow several feet in length every day. Swimming through the kelp is really fun. I feel like Indiana Jones exploring a wild jungle. The kelp can grow tall without a strong tree trunk because it floats, thanks to these little air pockets at the base of each leaf. The kelp is so thick, it blocks out the sun. As I look around the bottom, I see there are lots of other things growing here, like a variety of sponges encrusting this rock outcropping. But clearly, the Beagle Channel's most impressive animals are the crabs. Everywhere I look, crabs jump out of my way as I approach. Most of them are these little red crabs with a body about the size of a quarter. But there are also decorator crabs covered in camouflage, apparently willing to hunt the smaller crabs. And another crab climbing the kelp to safety. But at last I find what I came for, the crab that rules this patch of ocean, the king crab. Although they get much bigger than this, even this small one's quite a handful. After I put it down, the crab takes off through the seaweed on the bottom. Finally settling back to pose for my camera again. At the end of my dive, I surface from the land of the crabs and we enjoy a surface interval on a small island in the channel. The views of the surrounding area are beautiful. Patagonia is just gorgeous. As much as I've enjoyed Ushuaia, the following morning finds me rolling my gear down the dock for my departure to Antarctica. My home away from home, the Alexi Marev, a 210-foot-long Russian research vessel with an ice-strengthened hull. I meet the staff of the ship, who luckily for me speak English quite well, and then it's time to board. I'll have plenty of time to put my gear together on the long run to Antarctica. A little later, they untie us from the dock, and it's time to embark on the trip of a lifetime. On our way down the Beagle Channel to open water, we pass a small rock island covered in South American sea lions. And then we pass the famous Beagle Channel lighthouse. After leaving the Beagle Channel, we round Cape Horn into the Drake Passage and make our way more than 600 miles south until we reach the protection afforded by the end of the Antarctic Peninsula. Until then, we're at the mercy of some of the most violent and unpredictable seas in the world. From the bridge, the first officer drives the ship with a confidence that comes from many years of making this journey. Our progress is charted on a map by a GPS. So far, the weather has been mild and the seas calm.
The Drake Passage is considered the roughest section of water in the world, and boy, did we get lucky today.
Later, the fog closes in, but the sea remains calm. I have almost 3 days of this until we get there. Even my tiny cabin isn't too uncomfortable for a nap. The next day, the sun is out, but we still aren't there.
You know, 2.5 days is a long time to be sitting on a ship with nothing to do. But when we get to Antarctica, it's gonna be worth it.
With yet another day to go, I'm running out of things to do.
Hello? Can you hear me now? Wrong room. Wooka? Wanuka? Wahooka? Hello? Forget it.
At last, land appears in the distance. We made it to Antarctica. The ship is covered in a fresh layer of snow, but the sun is trying to burn through the clouds. icebergs float by. I can hardly believe my eyes. I'm actually here. And we don't waste any time. Our dive team starts suiting up for our first dive to explore the underwater world of Antarctica. Of course, I'm using my dry suit again, but this time instead of 45-degree water, I'm expecting 30-degree water. Our Zodiac goes over the side, and we're off with our dive master Jonas driving the boat. I'm really excited. I can't wait to get below the surface and start exploring. But first, I need my warmest dive gloves.
It's very interesting to do anything when you have gigantic, fat, cold water mitts on. Just putting on your dive computer takes about 10 minutes. All right.
I'm bundled up with my heaviest undergarments. I have so much insulation, I can barely move.
Well, I'm a long way from the Caribbean. I came all the way to Antarctica to go diving, and I guess I should have expected that there was going to be ice in the water. I'm assuming that means it's going to be pretty cold. I'll let you know. Oh yeah, that's a little chilly. Oh, baby.
I'm floating in an ocean filled with icebergs drifting by.
This water is below freezing. That's possible because it's salt water. This is fresh water, so the ice is frozen and floating in it. This water is so cold that if you fell into this water without a dry suit on, you could be dead in 5 minutes.
And that begs the question, what could possibly live in such cold water?
Well, let's go check it out.
My first glimpse of the underwater terrain reveals mostly just some seaweed on the bottom, flowing gently in the current. But a closer look reveals a community of bottom-dwelling invertebrates, including vast armies of limpets, snail-like animals with cone-shaped shells. They eat the algae on the rocks. A bright red sea star hunts down limpets for lunch. Nearby, anemones wait for prey, their stinging tentacles armed and ready for an unwary fish. A sea cucumber uses feathery branching arms to grab plankton out of the water to eat. But then, I look up from the bottom and something catches my eye. It's a Gentoo penguin swimming around with the grace of a dolphin and the speed of a torpedo. These birds might not be able to fly, but underwater they sure can swim. Their wings are adapted for providing underwater propulsion, and few animals in the ocean can swim with such grace and speed as a penguin. In the limited visibility, they're hard to film because I never know from which direction they'll swim. Just above the water on the beach, thousands of gentoos are warming up in the sun. A Gentoo penguin is easy to identify because of its bright red beak. Many of these gentoos are barely more than chicks, waiting patiently for their downy baby feathers to fall off. These poofy feathers keep them warm when they're little, but they're not good for swimming. I watch a group of young penguins practicing their swimming technique in a small tide pool. The tide pool offers protection from the open ocean, and it's a nice shallow spot to try swimming and hunting. Unfortunately, there's nothing here to eat, so foraging for food doesn't produce a meal. As the birds get older and their adult feathers grow in, they start gathering down by the ocean. Soon they take short hops into the freezing water to hunt in the shallows for krill and small invertebrates. It doesn't take long before they learn to swim like experts and take off to hunt together in groups. Penguins on the move porpoise in and out of the water like dolphins. But then they can hop right back up on land like no dolphin I've ever seen. Who needs to fly when you can swim like this? Soon we head back to the ship and pull anchor to move a few hours south. We're making our way towards the polar circle and passing some incredible scenery on the way. The next day, back in the Zodiacs, we head towards a shipwreck. The Governor was a whaling ship that caught fire in 1916, so the captain ran it aground to save the crew. I drop into the water to explore the southernmost shipwreck of my life. Although the bow is out of the water, the stern lies over 70 feet below. It's a long swim down the side of the hull to get to the stern. The hull is covered in patches of beautiful yellow finger sponges. I didn't realize that sponges like this could be found in such cold water. Looking closer at the sponges, I discover an Antarctic blenny resting there. Fish survive in this water because they have antifreeze in their blood that keeps it from freezing even when the water is below 32 degrees. Suddenly, a huge shape catches my eye. It's the biggest jelly I've ever seen in my life, swimming through the water with tentacles hanging down more than 50 feet. I swim over to investigate this massive animal, and the bell of the jelly is more than 2 feet across. As I rise towards the surface at the end of my dive, I encounter a huge wall of ice. It's an iceberg that drifted into the bay. The wall of the iceberg is covered in dimples like the ones on a golf ball. This pattern forms as the iceberg melts. Thousands of tiny bubbles are released from the melting ice as well, making the water near the iceberg look like a fizzy drink. The iceberg only rises a few feet above the surface, but it's more than 30 feet deep.
When you see an iceberg floating by, there's not that much above water sometimes, but that's because more than 90% of an iceberg is actually underwater. If I flip it over, you can see just how much ice there is. That's why icebergs are really dangerous to ships, because you can't see the part that's hidden underwater. Fun with ice. Let me get my arm under it.
Getting the gear out of the water and into the Zodiac can be quite a challenge because of all the weight I have to carry. Heading back to the ship, we have a little time to unwind while we again change locations, heading even further south. We pass through the Beagle Channel filled with floating chunks of ice. I can hear them bouncing off the bow, and I'm glad that this ship has an ice-strengthened hull. The next morning, we're at it again, launching the Zodiacs over the side and preparing for another adventure. I carry my camera down to the boat, and we're off. Today, we're hunting quietly for a very special animal. And sure enough, we found them. Leopard seals sleeping on an iceberg. These animals, which reach 12 feet long, are the apex predators of the Antarctic. There are no sharks in the waters of Antarctica, but these seals fill that niche in the food chain.
Yeah, cool.
Soon, the leopard seals wake from their nap and come over to investigate us. They've been known to bite and deflate Zodiacs when they're being territorial. We watch carefully for a few minutes before we drop into the water with this animal. Leopard seals are big, aggressive, and have sharp teeth. But this one doesn't look aggressive at all. I must admit, I'm a little apprehensive as I prepare to roll into the water, but I'm also excited. I've wanted to film a leopard seal for a long time. The seal makes a few passes to check me out, but he seems a lot more curious than aggressive. I don't follow the seal at all, but hold my ground and keep the camera rolling. I let him come to me. Divers are not very common down here. This leopard seal has probably never seen a diver or a video camera before. Either he sees his reflection in the lens, or he's looking for a career in show business. Either way, this animal sure doesn't seem to mind my presence. The leopard seal is so curious that he stays around for more than an hour. I even have enough time to go get my still camera and take a few pictures. Look how big he is compared to me. It's a good thing he's in a good mood. Although leopard seals can hold their breath for an hour while diving, this one lounging with me near the surface regularly pops his nose above water for a breath.
That was such a great dive with that leopard seal. Man, it was so friendly. It stayed with me for over an hour. But I've been in this water for so long, my face is frozen.
With the circulation returning to my face, we head back to the ship, while I think of all the great things I saw in Antarctica, from the towering walls of a tremendous iceberg to a gigantic jelly. I saw incredible underwater acrobatics and astonishingly beautiful scenery. Penguins nesting among the ancient bones of whales. and humpbacks feeding in some of the most beautiful bays I've ever seen. From the surprising color of the invertebrates living in the freezing water to the stark beauty of the frozen landscape, Antarctica is spectacular to behold. Soon, we must turn north for our long journey back to Ushuaia. As the sun sets on the passing ice, I have plenty of time to reminisce about my adventures. As we leave the protection of the Antarctic Peninsula, we discover the Drake Passage is not as kind as it was on the way down. But for that incredible hour I spent with a curious leopard seal, it's worth it. Antarctica might be cold, and the diving is hard work, but I'll never forget this magical place way down at the bottom of the blue world.
Meet Jonathan Bird, one of the world's top underwater nature cinematographers. Traveling the world on assignment for all the major networks, he is an Emmy Award-winning authority on the underwater world. In freshwater or salt, reefs, wrecks, or caves, Jonathan documents the world beneath the waves. Welcome to the Blue World.
Everyone knows that the Bahamas have beautiful beaches and lush coral reefs, but they're also world-renowned for cave diving. And in the Bahamas, cave diving usually means blue holes. In particular, the island of Andros has dozens of blue holes clearly visible from the air.
Walking through the forest here on Andros, you can see that the forest floor is the remains of an ancient seabed. This limestone was formed by coral reefs millions of years ago.
Rain, combining with carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, creates mild carbonic acid, otherwise known as acid rain, which slowly dissolves limestone.
Millions of years of rain falling on this rock and then draining in have slowly dissolved away the rock, creating these odd little crevices and holes, and it's made the whole floor of the forest look like a gigantic piece of Swiss cheese. Some of the holes have gotten pretty big. I mean, this one's the size of a hot tub. But in a few places, the holes are enormous and full of water. These are the blue holes.
It's easy to see how the blue holes got their name. Andros is covered in them. They look like circular ponds from the air and often lead into vast underwater cave systems. I've teamed up with Small Hope Bay Lodge and dive master Mike Hornby to explore the Guardian, one of the more famous blue holes on Andros. It's a hike through the brush to get there.
We have about a quarter of a mile. We're going to have to carry our gear in.
I gotta walk all the way in here in my full scuba gear?
Yep.
Oh man.
Well, we haven't got too far to go. We're just about ready to round the corner, and it's going to open up into a beautiful blue hole. Okay, Jonathan, here it is. This is the Guardian blue hole.
Wow. It doesn't look that blue.
If you look off in the distance there and you see that little bit of an archway,
Yeah.
that is going to lead into one cave system, and right down here, this is the entrance into our other cave system.
So this is where we're going down
Yes, so the Guardian blue hole is the portal for the cave systems that lie underneath.
So I head back to get my camera.
This is a lot less convenient than boat diving.
It takes several trips to get my camera plus all the other gear to the water.
What I want to know is, who was the first guy to discover this muddy hole and say, hey, this would be a great place to go for a dive? I mean, look at it.
Back at the truck, Mike and I start suiting up. We will walk in our gear to the water. Mike, as a cave diving instructor, will be my guide to exploring the blue hole.
Thank you.
Mike wears some specific gear for cave diving, including redundant dive computers, an extra regulator, and he will even be carrying a spare scuba tank.
So I'm not quite as technical as Mike, but I do have some specialized gear for cave diving. So I have a scuba tank. It's a normal scuba tank, but it has an H valve on it. It has two separate independent first stages. So I've got my normal regulator that I always use on the first one, and a completely separate redundant backup regulator on the other one. So that way I can turn one off, turn the other one on. If I were to have a problem with either one of my regulators, I have a completely secondary backup. For lighting, my lights on my camera, my huge video lights, those are my primary lights, but I have a flashlight in my pocket and a chemical light stick, which you break it, it glows, you have 12 hours of light, and it has no batteries. That's probably more light than I'm gonna need.
With all our gear assembled and ready, we hike into the brush, and man, is it hot! Nothing like a long walk in the hot Bahamian sun wearing full scuba gear and a wetsuit to burn off a few calories.
This water's going to feel extremely good after that warm walk through here.
Oh yeah. I'm looking forward to that.
Finally, it's time to jump into the water and explore the Guardian.
Oh, that feels so good.
Well, it's time to go check it out.
As I sink down into the yellowish green water, I can hardly see because it's so murky. I'm following Mike's pink fins. He specifically uses the brightest pink he can find so the people following behind can see him in limited visibility. Cameraman Tim is right behind me, bringing up the rear as we sink down into the dark, spooky hole in the ground. As we descend, we pass through layers of what looks like smoke in the water. Mike points out these clouds of suspended sediments to me as we keep sinking. The blue hole leads into a huge cave system, and it's a lot deeper than you might imagine. Periodically, Mike turns to make sure we're still here, and his flashlight illuminates a permanent guideline that previous divers have installed. This line guides the way out in case we get disoriented. The walls on each side of us go straight down. We're sinking into a deep crack. As we get deeper, the walls get closer together, but the water gets clearer. We've passed into seawater from the fresh water above. I can taste the salt on my lips. If we could go far enough, eventually we could reach the ocean. Mike points to ancient fossilized seashells embedded into the limestone. Here's a conch shell. Our bubbles are hitting the rock overhangs and knocking off sediment, which is raining down around us, reducing the visibility. I continue to follow Mike until finally at 150 feet deep, we reach some stalactites in a formation called candle wax. These were formed by dripping water during the last ice age when sea levels were much lower and this part of the cave was dry. Down below me, it's more than 500 feet deep in this cave. I don't think we'll be going down there. We turn around and start heading back, with Mike continuing to point out fossils. Following our guideline back into the shallower, murky water, Tim is right behind me. And Mike, with his spare scuba tank slung under his arm, is right ahead. Periodically, markers on the line point the way out. These can be used in the event of a light failure to feel your way to the surface. At last, we can see the dim glow of daylight from above as we ascend towards the sun. Back in the shallows of the blue hole, Mike shows me around. The bottom looks like it's sand, but it's actually a deep layer of silt. While Tim hovers high above the bottom to keep from kicking up silt, I perform a little experiment. Down on the bottom, I plunge my arm into the silt up to my shoulder, and it's even deeper than that. This is a layer of decomposing leaves and other organic stuff. The decomposition creates hydrogen sulfide, a deadly gas that smells like rotting eggs. The water is saturated with hydrogen sulfide, and I can smell it in the water that seeps around the edge of my mask.
Wow. Whew. That dive can only be described as spooky. The water is kind of colored like mustard, and you can't really see where you're going, and it's all swirly. And if I wasn't following Mike, I would have been totally lost. That dive was very spooky, but really interesting.
The next day, I'm out on the ocean, suiting up for another dive. Mike has something he wants me to see. After the last dive, I can't imagine what crazy thing he's thinking now. I roll into the water and follow Mike and his trademark pink fins down to the reef. Then we keep going down into a cavern below the reef. At the bottom of the cavern, Mike points to a hole and motions for me to go in ahead of him. Once again, it's pretty spooky, but exciting at the same time. So, in I go, with Tim and Mike right behind me. Inside, it opens up into a big cave. We're not deep enough for stalactites, though. As we come around a corner, I look straight up to see light coming in from above through a huge crack in the rock. We make our way right up the fissure into the blue above. I'm in an ocean blue hole, formed just like an inland blue hole 20,000 years ago during an ice age when the ocean levels were much lower. Once the ocean levels rose, this blue hole ended up underwater. But this blue hole connects through a vast labyrinth of caves to the inland blue holes. And as we emerge into the open ocean, something looks weird. When the tide goes out, all the water from inside the caves gets sucked out into the ocean, bringing with it silt and hydrogen sulfide from the inland blue holes. It forms clouds near the bottom with a distinct line between the clear ocean water above and the silty hydrogen sulfide layer below. What you're seeing here are the decomposing remains of forest vegetation which have passed entirely through the caves and out into the ocean. Everywhere I find what look like strands of mucus floating in the water. It's most likely mucus secreted by the coral in response to the caustic hydrogen sulfide. It's stuck on everything, including this gorgonian, which has closed all its polyps to protect itself from the hydrogen sulfide. As the tide carries the toxic water away, the corals will go back to normal. Finally, we head back to the boat. Tim and Mike hang onto the anchor line to do a short safety stop before we surface. My exploration of the Guardian Blue Hole on Andros was both fascinating and a little spooky, but I have to admit, I'm intrigued. There are quite a few more blue holes on Andros for me to explore, so I'll be back. The whale shark is the largest fish in the sea, and it would take an enormous aquarium to hold a whale shark. I'm here at the Georgia Aquarium, the largest aquarium in the world. They don't have a whale shark. They have 4. The Georgia Aquarium is one of the world's most spectacular. It houses exhibits ranging from coral reefs to kelp forests, saltwater to freshwater, warm water to cold water, and just about everything in between. But there's no doubt that the 6.3 million gallon Ocean Voyager exhibit is the most impressive part of the Georgia Aquarium. It's as deep as a 3-story building, and the main viewing window is larger than a movie theater screen, creating a fantastic place to sit and watch the fish go by.
And that's named after a park in Taiwan.
I enjoy the bubble window where I can relax and watch the sharks. There's also a tunnel through the Ocean Voyager so people can walk underneath the marine life, which includes some of nature's most magnificent animals like manta rays and whale sharks. Keeping manta rays and whale sharks in captivity is difficult. First of all, these are huge animals. Mantas grow larger than a car, and whale sharks larger than a bus. So they need a lot of space. But they pose another interesting challenge as well. Both are filter feeders. In the wild, they strain their planktonic food by swimming with an open mouth and capturing small animals from the water on their gill rakers. In an aquarium, there's no plankton. Aquarists had to train the animals for hand feeding. To learn how they feed the mantas, I make my way to the top of the Ocean Voyager exhibit, a nearly football field-sized fish tank. There I meet Chris Coco, the curator of zoological operations.
We'll be staged here, and this is where you're going to jump and help us load the ladle.
He introduces me to biologists Christy Elo and Kelly Maples, the aquarists who are going to show me how to feed the mantas.
All right.
This is Christy and Kelly.
Hi, nice
Jonathan
to meet
Bird.
you, Jonathan. Kelly, nice to meet you.
These 2 are the biologists up here that work the animals every day.
You guys are lucky.
The mantas are fed a combination of krill and small fish from a ladle. Since the mantas can't swim in place, they have to be fed while they swim by gently ladling the food out in front of their mouths.
Wow, fantastic. Here we go. We'll fill it up. About that much? That's good? Excellent.
After observing a few times, now it's my turn to try.
Okay, and then you just trickle it out.
Yeah, the key is to not dump it too soon. She's going to stick with you and stick with the ladle, so.
A little more, or then? I don't know, I'm a little nervous. There's all these people watching. I don't want to mess it up. I mean, it looks so easy, but I know it's not.
The one thing that we do ask, the one thing that it can be a little difficult when you get a little bit of water in as you go, try to keep the ladle out in front of her. She gets moving kind of fast, so it is possible to kind of hit her in the face with the ladle. So.
How's that? All right. Woo! Thank you very much. Thank you so much. That was cool. How many people get to do that? I got to feed a manta ray. That is so cool.
Feeding the whale sharks is even more complicated. It involves the aquarists using small boats to keep ahead of the moving whale sharks.
This is like a precision ballet of whale shark feeding. These ropes go all the way across the tank, and each aquarist has to pull themselves along in a boat, scooping out the food, staying just ahead of the whale shark. But what's really amazing is that each whale shark gets a different diet, so they're only feeding one particular shark. And the sharks are trained to only follow one particular boat. The best part about it is nobody bumps into each other. It's amazingly well orchestrated, and really, I can't imagine how long it took to train the sharks to do this.
While I get the bird's eye view of the feeding from above, The aquarium visitors get the fisheye view from below in the tunnel, with the sharks feeding directly overhead. If feeding these animals looks a little complicated, imagine how hard it was to get them here. It all started in Taiwan, where the sharks are hunted for food. The Georgia Aquarium teamed up with a local fisherman to capture a live whale shark. Once they had it in a pen, they transferred it to a specially made sling. Then it was transferred into a custom tank with life support for an overseas flight. Finally, the shark was flown on a private charter across the Pacific all the way to Atlanta, where it was driven to the aquarium. It's quite a journey for a shark. Given how expensive and difficult it is to get whale sharks all the way to the Georgia Aquarium, the staff isn't taking any chances when it comes to their care. The rooms where food is prepared are nearly as clean as operating rooms. And the water quality is constantly monitored. I spend some time down in the pump room with John Masson, the assistant manager of life support.
John, this place is huge. Tell me about these pumps.
Well, here at the Georgia Aquarium, we have about 36 50 horsepower pumps on this side of the room, 34 25 horsepower pumps on the other side, which means we pump about 140,000 gallons a minute through this room, which is enough to turn over 6.3 million gallons in under an hour.
So you can pump the entire exhibit, 6.3 million gallons in 1 hour.
Yeah, actually we can. It's equivalent of one of these pumps can actually fill a swimming pool in about 15 minutes, which about 30,000 gallons. So each one does about 2,000 gallons.
Wow, that's a lot of water.
It is a lot of water.
I notice there's no leaks.
We try to minimize all of our leaks at least, yes.
Good plumbing.
Yeah, it's nice.
Now you might be wondering, if you're in Atlanta, Georgia, and you want to have 6.3 million gallons of ocean water, what do? Well, Instant Ocean, gigantic bags of powdered sea salt and minerals. Mix it with fresh water, and you got ocean.
And I'm about ready to try diving in this inland ocean, so I head upstairs for my briefing with dive master Devin Fleming.
All right, so basically once we get done here, we're going to get you guys set up in the locker rooms. We're going to throw in the dock for you, move your gear down there. It is also basically valet diving. So once we get done with the briefing, you guys are going to get changed and we're going to head down to the dock. Just pull your fins, your mask and gloves on. We'll get your gear put on for you guys, and then we're going to ask you to do a forward roll into the water once your dive master's cleared you to go.
While I go and get my gear on, they put the dock in the water. They don't leave it in all the time because the animals might injure themselves on it. Now the moment I've been waiting for all day.
Oh, and look, they gave me a sign so I won't mistake my gear for anybody else's. You know what's interesting about this is they don't want to get any contaminants into the exhibit, so they don't even want us to use our own dive gear. We have to use wetsuits from the aquarium, BCs, regulators, everything. They were really nice though, and they let me use my own fins, but first we had to put them in disinfectant, so they are now extremely clean. Yeah, they won't hurt you at all. Did you go in?
Yes, stay into the water.
All right, let's go check it out.
All right.
There's a whale shark right under me. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Before I even have my camera, a whale shark swims silently right below the dock. It's hard to believe that I'm in a giant fish tank with a whale shark.
Welcome to the world's largest aquarium. Enjoy your dive and your tour with Devin this morning and 5,000 or 6,000 of your favorite friends.
On the bottom, a great hammerhead comes over to check me out. I follow Devin down towards the deep end of the exhibit, and Tallulah, the manta ray, swims over to say hello. Soon I pass over the tunnel with lots of people inside. They're looking up at me, and I can't help but think how lucky I am to be able to do this dive. I wave to the kids and keep moving with Devin to the deep part of the exhibit. A whale shark with a school of jacks keeping him company swims over me. The whale sharks move around this huge tank in circles and figure eights. They're used to the divers and don't mind us at all. There's so much marine life in this exhibit that sometimes I forget I'm doing a dive in an aquarium. My camera moves from whale shark to great hammerhead. Then on to Nandi, the other manta ray, doing barrel rolls. Then, back to another hammerhead. Through the enormous viewing window, the crowd watches the action, a sand tiger shark passing right in front of the glass. The experience is almost overwhelming. It would take quite a few dives to get used to this. I just can't believe my eyes. There are so many fish. On the bottom, a sawfish catches my attention. This is a kind of ray with a saw-like nose for hunting prey. I've never even seen one of these in the wild, but they have nearly a dozen of them in this exhibit. One of the aquarium staff divers peacefully enjoys a sand tiger shark lazily drifting by. In spite of their fierce-looking teeth, these sharks are no threat to people. They eat smaller prey. Soon, my dive nears the end. On our way back to the shallow end of the exhibit, I pass once again over the tunnel with the people looking up. And Tallulah buzzes by again as if to bid me farewell. Devin gives me the signal to head up to the surface. It was such a short dive, I don't know if I can bring myself to getting out of the water.
I have never been on a dive with so many species of fish. I don't even know where to point my camera. I gotta go back in.
Maybe they won't notice if I stay just a little while longer. This is one dive I just don't want to end.